road, and when you do it, it's like this. I'm going to take my gloves out. I'm going to check, make sure I have a fully charged fire extinguisher, make sure it's secured. I'm going to check over here. I'm going to make sure I have at least 3 reflective triangles and extra fuses. Make sure my doors are shut. I'm going to check my weather stripping, make sure it's in good condition. Make sure my door closes properly. I'm going to check the side of the vehicle, make sure it's in good condition, make sure there's no damage to it. I'll check my grab bars, make sure they're secured, make sure there's no bolts missing, make sure they're all tight. Then I'm going to check my mirrors, make sure it's tight, make sure they're not loose, make sure they're not missing. I'm going to check my mirror, make sure it's clean, make sure it's not broken or cracked. I'm going to check my signal lamp, make sure it's working properly. I'm going to make sure I have lenses are not cracked. I have amber in the front, red in the back. I'm going to make sure I have my reflective triangle. Then I'm going to check my tires. Make sure it's not flat. The steering tire should be original tread, and they should have a minimum of 4/32 of an inch of tread. Then I'm going to check the sidewall, make sure it's not damaged, make sure there's no cuts or blisters. Check my rim, make sure there's no cracks, make sure there's no illegal welds. Then I'm going to check my lug nuts, make sure they're all tight. Check my wet hub, make sure it's full of 90 weight oil. Also check the wet hub gasket, make sure there's no oil leaking. Then I'm going to check the air governor, make sure the hoses are tight, make sure there's no air leakage. I'm going to check the air compressor, make sure there's no air leaking. If it has its own oil reservoir, I need to check that before I take the truck on the road, make sure it's full. Check all the clamps, make sure they're tight. Make sure the fuel pump is not leaking any fuel. Make sure all the hoses are tight. Also, I'm going to check my power steering reservoir. Make sure it's full of oil. Make sure the hoses are not leaking any oil. I'm going to check my suspension. I'm going to check my leaf spring shackle. Make sure there's no cracks. Make sure the nuts are tight. I'm going to check the leaf spring hanger. Make sure it's well lubricated. Make sure the bolts and nuts are tight. Then I'm going to check my leaf spring. Make sure all the leaves are in good condition. If there's more of a 1/4 inch breakage in any of the leaves, the vehicle's service needs to be repaired before you go on the road. I'm going to check my shock absorber. Make sure the nuts are tight. Make sure the mounting bracket is in good condition. Make sure all the bolts are there. Make sure the shock absorber is not wet. That could mean that the shock absorber is no good. Then I'm going to check my steering shaft. Make sure the U-joints are lubricated. Make sure there's no damage to the shaft. Check my steering gearbox. Make sure it's mounted properly and secure. Make sure the bolts are not missing. Then I'm going to check my pitman arm. Make sure it's not bent. Make sure the bolt and the nut is tight, and make sure the gears are not stripped. Then I'm going to check my castle nut. Make sure it's tight. Make sure it has its cotter pin. Then I'm going to check my drag lead. Make sure it's not bent. Make sure the bolts are tight. Then I'm going to check my brake system. First of all, I'm going to check my air hose. Right here. Right here. Make sure, check my air hose or air line. Make sure the couplings are tight, both ends. Make sure there's no air leak.
Can you hold this like this?
Then I'm going to check.
While I move it?
Right here, I'm going to check my air brake chamber. Make sure the nuts, top and bottom, are there. Make sure they're tight. Make sure the clamp is tight. I'm going to check my push rod, make sure it's not bent or damaged, make sure it doesn't move more than 2 inches when outside the brakes. I'm going to check also